So here we are with our next guest, and our guest was actually a guest of ours on Facebook Live recently. He runs a chapter of Adoptees Connect with another person in Atlanta. And here's Michael Knox. Welcome.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Yeah.
So Michael, how are you here? Tell us your adoption story
or just your story. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my story starts back in 1961 when I was adopted from the Cradle Society in Chicago, Illinois, which, as it turns out, I didn't care about, but I found out Bob Hope and Red Skelton and all the Hollywood bigwigs would go to the Cradle Society for their babies. The blonde hair, I don't have blonde anymore, but I still have blue eyes. Blonde hair, blue eyes guy. And so, I didn't, I was adopted. A couple of years later, my sister was adopted, and lo and behold, the chosen one, as we talk about, she came along after 14 years of marriage, and mom got pregnant with, my other sister. So growing up was interesting. We were in Chicago.
So wait, there were two adoptees, and then she got pregnant. Okay.
Yeah.
Same might happen in my family.
Yeah. And so we were living in Chicago when she got pregnant and moved to Southern California. And so my baby sister was born in Southern California. What I didn't realize until I found my family, as I said, is that my mom was an only child to my grandmother, this is adopted side, who was an only child to a very wealthy, influential man in the 1900s. Very, very wealthy, in the Ford realm. He manufactured trucks and had a huge, had this family history that my grandmother needed to pass down. Well, my grandmother paid a lot of money, which I found out after I found my family, to adopt me. So for the first time ever at, I'd say 59, I realized, oh my God, I was purchased. I wasn't adopted. I mean, you don't realize that. And my whole life growing up, my grandmother would say, oh, you got to know the history of your grandfather and blah, blah, blah. And as a kid, you don't even think about that garbage. It's like, whatever. Yeah. And so, but we moved to California. And of course, my grandmother being, we were the only grandchildren and everything, she followed along. And we were out there, and at the age of about, I would say 12, 13, my mom had a falling out with her mother. Remember, this is my adoptive mom with her only mother, and cut off all ties with her.
After she moved out to California with the family?
Yeah.
Well, and the grandmother moved out too, right? Is that
Yeah, everybody moved out.
And the grandma was the wife of rich guy, right?
Yeah, no, daughter.
Okay.
Yeah, daughter. Yeah. So, and the reason we moved out there is my adoptive father had 12 brothers and sisters, and the 9 brothers all served in the military, and they all went to California from Illinois and said, we're out of here. We're moving to California. So they were pretty much, all of them were out there, not all of them, but a lot of them. So when they had the falling out, my grandmother, we were really close. My grandmother and I were very, very close. And, as a 12-year-old, you don't understand what's going on. And what it was is, back then at that age, my mom was the narcissistic savior type, which you have with adoptive moms. And they were both functional alcoholics. So it was, they went to work every day. My dad worked 6 days a week. We were latchkey kids, but grandmother was everything. She moved close. And at that point, we didn't have grandmother anymore. And that was the only, the other grandmother was in Illinois. And so,
What was the falling out about? Did you ever find
I
out?
really don't know.
Never found out.
No, rumor has it, as I talked to my two sisters that I grew up with, is that one day my grandmother apparently cut my baby sister, the chosen one, cut her hair a little bit. And I guess mom went ballistic on the fact that she cut the hair. Whether that was it, who knows? It could have been any number of things.
Build-up,
Probably a buildup, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably a buildup. Yeah.
I don't even think Louise and I would have a falling out if I cut her hair.
Yeah. But I have to say that, where I grew up was, a great neighborhood, lots of kids. We had lots of fun,
We know Southern California very well. Where were you?
It was North Hollywood. It's now called Valley Village.
Oh, yeah,
Because they
Valley
couldn't-
Village.
Yeah, heaven forbid you could be North Hollywood anymore.
I know. I remember when they became Valley Village.
Yeah, that's where I lived. And so, but I mean, there was probably 20, 25 kids, on the street. It was a free for all the time. It was great. It was a great place to grow up. And typical, I will say all of, teenagers and whatnot, but I've heard it over and over and over again with adoptees. I started doing drugs and alcohol very early, like when I was 12, because my parents were drinking, and, started doing a little criminal stuff here and there that nobody ever really found out about. I was, I got away with it all. But at about, I would say 15 was, and I didn't think about it much until after I found my family, had a huge falling out with my mom. And she came down the hallway, and this is a big one in an adoptee world, is she's screaming at me and I'm screaming at her. And she goes, well, and I have a sleeping bag in my hand and she's screaming, get out of my house. And she takes all of my adoption paperwork and throws it at me and says, go find your real family.
Oof, that's harsh.
Yeah, but back then it wasn't as harsh as it is, believe it or not, now. Now that I think back on it, it was pretty bad, for her to do that.
Yeah, you can look back and see yourself as that child, and that is harsh. But at the time, you're like, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. And that's what it was. It was like, whatever. And the peacemaker of my dad came home and, made everything okay. And, I stuck around for a while longer. So, but, it was, like I said, I didn't think about it much at all back then. It was just like every family, every kid, it's like, okay, well, this is the family I grew up in, and this is like, isn't this like every other family? I mean, I don't know. You don't know one way or another. So, but it was, that was my, the growing up part. And so, of course,
How was
as you
your,
would know,
were you close to the sisters that you grew up with then, or how much younger was the other adoptee sister?
2 and 2, so 2 and 4. So
Okay.
it was, yeah. And no, we fought all the time. There was never that closeness, and it confuses me to this day, because I have 3 kids of my own, and my daughter and son, who are 2 years apart, they would, at 8, 10 years old, they'd be sitting in the bedroom talking, and I'm going, what are you doing? They go, we're just talking. I go, about what? We're just talking. It's
They're
like,
friends.
okay, yeah, they're friends. It's like, well, dude, that's not how I grew up. It was weird to see my children, like each other, because it wasn't that we disliked each other, but we never spent any time together. We would never think about going into each other, sitting around talking to each other. No way.
And
I wonder if there was some sort of like mentality of like each man for his own. I've got to look out for myself because you're in
Yeah,
this,
well, when you
know,
when you have a dysfunctional family like that,
right.
yeah, you have to learn. Yeah, absolutely.
How did
So-
your mom treat your baby sister, the chosen one? I like that you say that.
Oh, we were sitting around we were all in our 30s and I was visiting and we sat around the dinner table. We were having dinner together and I said, Laura, you were treated far better than Karen and I. And she goes, and it took her until her 30s to go, yeah, I know. So yeah, she was treated with kid gloves where the adopted ones wasn't, and that's a shame. That's not what's supposed to happen, when, let me see, when you are chosen, she's the chosen one, but we were chosen to be adopted.
Yes.
So yeah, it doesn't work out that way. So
your mom throws the adoption papers at you. Did you leave? Did you stick around?
I probably left for the night, and my dad, my dad was very good about smoothing things over, but he was very disconnected. He wasn't he was a 60s dad, 70s dad. He didn't, they worked 6 days a week and provided. They were not, they weren't part of, that was my father. I'm sure there were other, there's lots of other fathers that were different, but, he provided well. I mean, we had like I said, great childhood, had a home to come home to, school, food on the table. So, the only thing was, like I said, he was disconnected. So, but yeah, that's okay. So I look back on it and I give him credit for having to deal with all that garbage, to be honest with you. Because, mom was a little bit, very dysfunctional. So,
and
yeah.
how were you in relationships and like in your 20s and,
With mom?
No, in general, like with you, how are you? A lot of adoptees are a little bit disconnected.
I didn't realize it until I found my family and started listening to podcasts and understanding adoptees. But yeah, I'm not good at bonding. No, I don't do the bonding thing well at all. But I'm also one that never ever gives up a relationship. In other words, I have my childhood friends. People I've worked with, and we were gone, I still keep in touch with. Yeah. My best friend growing up, still in touch with. And my wife always thought I was a really good guy because I would, call these people out of the blue. And Doug, who I knew when I was, 5 years old, I'd still keep up with, and he lives in Seattle and I'm here in Atlanta. And she just thought I was a good guy. And then all of a sudden, once, I'm listening to a podcast and the guy goes, oh yeah, I can't give up a relationship. I'm scared to death. I go, and all of a sudden it's like, ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, all the lights go off.
Yeah, all the lights go off, which is great about the podcast and connecting. It's therapy to understand. It's that self-awareness of why you do things, so yeah. So,
I call it loyal to a fault.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's a good
I call
one.
it pathologically loyal. That's what I've always called it.
Yeah.
Those are our terms.
Yeah. So I ended up, I was in LA and I ended up through a friend working in the television industry, which, as you well know, since you're there, for someone who does a lot of alcohol and drugs at the time, is not the best industry to get into.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get a job. It was a really good job. I have to give credit to the gentleman who hired me. He was a wonderful man, and I worked there for almost 15 years. I met my wife, like less than maybe a couple of months after I started working there, and we got married within 6 months. It was very quick.
And you're still together now?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
She's upstairs.
He doesn't leave relationships, remember?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
And he happens to love her.
Yeah. So we went, we had our first kid. We had a daughter, right? Within, very quickly. And 2 years later had a son, and I'm still working there, and at this point, I'm in the television industry. I'm making more money than you know what to do with, right? You know, you're not supposed to make that kind of money young. So I'm buying race cars. You know, I have, you know, these sports cars that I'm buying, you know, which plays into the story. So we end up moving to Atlanta for the Olympics. I'm gonna manage the Olympics. The company I work for rented television equipment to all of the studios and international whatnot. So we come here and my boss says, okay, you can go there for a year, but you know, I need you back here in Burbank, California. And I said, yeah, okay. Well, I get here within 1 year, you know, within a month, I buy a house and go, I'm not leaving. And at this point, my wife is pregnant with my second son, third kid. And it's funny, it's a longer story, but when I was in California, one of my race cars, I crashed. I was drunk, I was high, I crashed it. And, you know, everything came crashing down. And I kind of cleaned up my life real quick. And,
Friend of Bill?
Pardon me?
Friend of Bill?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And so we came to Georgia, and my baby son was only a couple of months old. And he's kind of a Southern boy as far as that's concerned. But it was kind of funny. Here's where I have to remember this, is that when we knew it was going to be a boy, and we picked two names for my, you know, the third son, and it was either going to be Daniel or James. And we let our second son pick the name, and he picked Daniel. So my third son is Daniel or Danny, right? So here I am in Georgia, which, you know, I've already started putting a lot of weight because I stopped drinking and everything, and I started eating ice cream. And I come to the South and it's like, oh my God, barbecue and sweet tea. And so I got up to about 265 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, I was huge. And so one day I'm at the soccer field with my baby boy who's 4 years old, and they're playing bunch ball, if you've ever watched the kids play soccer. And I said, well, I'll walk the field. And I walked the field. And next time around, I walked it again. And then I ran it once. And I was like, I couldn't move for 2 weeks. And I kept doing it. And next thing you know, I'm running races, and I start doing adventure racing and mountain bike racing and all this other stuff. And my best friend back in California that I worked with in television, I was doing adventure racing and he's doing Ironman triathlons. So I said, you know, I'm sitting on the beach in Florida one day, and I said, you know what, I'm going to give it a whirl. I'm going to try an Ironman. Well, a half one. So I did that. And, you know, it was fun. At about this time, you know, I'm losing weight pretty quickly at that point. And so, but for some reason, I decided to do Ancestry. And this was probably 10 years ago. And
wait, I have a quick question about, because when your kids were born, did you have any kind of sense like, oh, wow, this is my first biological?
No.
Really?
And I heard that over and over again.
Oh.
And I wonder why. To this day, I feel almost kind of guilty that I didn't want to know more about my, you know, my DNA, my mirroring, you know, all that stuff. And I didn't, you know, and my boys, you know, when you look at my two boys in a picture of mine, it's like, yeah, that's dad and sons, you know, I mean, we look alike. But it never dawned on me. I mean, I really didn't care that I was adopted.
Did your wife say anything? Like, oh, these are your first, you know?
Maybe she did, but it didn't click. I never cared. It really didn't matter to me that I was adopted. So I did Ancestry only because I was kind of curious, where did I come from? Because back then it was like, It was just, where did you come from? And it was like, oh, I'm like 50% Russian Finnish. It's like, oh, great. Okay, well, I know that much. And I went on my happy way. And
we were just talking. I'm laughing only because we were just talking about this, the searching part. But go on.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm listening to more and more podcasts. I'm doing more and more triathlons. Now I've done like 3 or 4, at this point, 4 full Ironmans. I keep doing them. And I'm listening to a health podcast now, and I'm into podcasts, not adoption. Thank you. And one of them was, oh, if you do 23andMe, the DNA is so sophisticated, you send it to this next company and it'll tell you which vitamins and minerals are good for you.
Oh.
So again, I don't care about 23andMe. I only care about the health stuff. Yeah. So I send it off on its happy way. And I do that. And like, was it like a year and a half later? No, let me back up. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, on Ancestry, for some reason I was logged into it, whatnot. I got an email on Ancestry, and some girl sent me an internal email there and says, hey, we're closely related. Who are you? And I said, I don't know, I'm adopted. Told her who I was. And she sent me back a few days later. She goes, well, we don't know who you are. And I go, well, if you find out, great, let me know. And that was the end. I didn't care.
So many people would like just be so excited about that.
I know.
Yeah, some people would be jumping up and down about it, and I didn't care.
Thanks for reaching out, Best Michael.
Yeah. So I'm 2.5 years ago, I'm at the beach, and Ancestry, if you guys, or no, 23andMe, if you've done it, they send you emails all the time about new medical studies and, oh, you might have twitchy eye syndrome or whatever it might be. So I logged in. It's like, no, I don't have that trait. And I said, I'll check my relatives. And lo and behold, here is Chuck, who is my first cousin. Oh, no, my nephew. And then there's 3 other people that are my first cousins. I said, oh, well, wow. And so I said, well, I wrote my email to him in 23andMe, say, I don't know who I am, I don't know anything about me, blah, 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 blah. And a week later, I get a phone call from Florida, which I ignore, I don't need another timeshare. And I get a text message, hey, this is Chuck. And that was the name on the thing. I go, you want to talk? And I said, yeah. And I came down to this room, which is our workout room in the basement. And I sat down on the same bench that I'm sitting on now. And I called him and I said, hey, Chuck, we might be related. He goes, yeah. He goes, are you sitting down? And he goes, are you sitting down? I go, yeah, matter of fact, I am. I go, well, I'm your brother.
Not a cousin.
Not a cousin. 23andMe had it wrong. And as you guys have talked to enough people, this is where time stops, and you really don't hear anything else. And we were on the phone for 45 minutes, and I can't, the few things I remember is him saying that, oh, you have a sister, she wants to talk to you, and your mother lives down here too. And she even said that. She said, he said the same thing my sister did, our mother, right from the get-go. It was like, which was so, I guess that probably what put me in the twilight zone is like, what? And
the terminology must have been like, whoa.
Yeah. And not to mention, I had 2 sisters growing up. I never had a brother. So it was like, what? I mean, everything about it was kind of weird. And well, not even weird, just out of body. The whole thing's out of body. And he just goes, the only thing mom wants to know is if you've had a good life. And it took me a long time, and I could show you around this room, but I got big mirrors in the room everywhere because it's a workout room. And I'm standing now and looking at myself. And for someone to ask you, have you had a good life? You have to think about damn near everything, you know? I mean, it's just the hardest question in the world, I guess. And what I finally came to the conclusion to tell him towards the end, I go, tell you, this is what you say to her, is that all three of my children are always very worried about me when I go out bike riding, you know, because I go and ride all the time on the roads. And they all said, hey, Dad, you know, it's pretty dangerous out there. I go, I know, guys, you know, but let me tell you right now, if I get hit on the road and I'm dead, one thing I want you to know is I've had a really good life and I'm proud of all three of you. And I couldn't have asked for anything better. And I conveyed that to my brother and said, pass that on to Mom. That's the best way I can tell her that that's what my life has been. And so, yeah, and whether he conveyed it that way, I don't know, you know, who knows? He probably didn't hear anything either when he's talking, you know. And so it
Had
was
he always known about you or
okay. So here's what happened. I'll try to put it in a nutshell. My birth father and mother, he was a senior in college. She was a sophomore. It was a one-night stand in Illinois. And he went home to Illinois, Evanston, Illinois. I'll remember. But he went back home to Mom and Dad's after he graduated because he was a senior, because it was the end of the year, and he hooked up with his high school sweetheart, which was the plan all along. She went to college somewhere else. They got engaged and got married within 6 months. Meanwhile, my birth mother is back at college, and all of a sudden she's done, and it's summertime, and something's not right. Yeah. And so she goes home, and this is how dumb I am. I didn't even know abortion was illegal in the 60s. I was, baby scoop boy, but didn't know it until I started listening to podcasts and understanding this. And her father was a doctor. So when she came home and told him, she goes, well, you have two choices. You can put him up for adoption or have an abortion, because, he could do that. And she just said, all she said to me when I asked her about that, because I did ask her, she said, it just didn't feel right. So she went to the birth mother's home and, gave birth and went on her happy way, went back to college, got married. She told her husband, her future husband, that, she had given a kid up for adoption. She thought it was the right thing to do. They worked for 10 years, gave birth to my sister, half sister, and then 3 years later, my half brother. Was
she in that, you mentioned the home, what was the name of it?
Cradle.
Oh, no, the Cradle Society was where I was adopted.
But she wasn't there. Yes. Okay.
No, the Cradle Society is strictly an adoption
agency.
Okay.
Adoption agency. Yeah.
So who got the big bucks that the adoption agency?
Right. That's what I was thinking.
She said she was at something called the Singer House, is what she remembers. Unwed mother's home.
Yeah.
And so 20 years later, my sister is pregnant. Okay. So they're married. They get a divorce. He moves to Florida with the kids. She moves to Vermont, and my sister gets pregnant with her first kid, and she's worried because my birth mother had a miscarriage, her first child. And Dad goes, "Oh no, that was a car accident. And oh, by the way, you can never tell your mom this. My sister is now 20. She gave birth to a son, before we were married."
That's how your half sister found out.
My half sister, and then she told the half brother. They kept it a secret from Mom for 28 years.
So they both knew. So when you found them, they were like.
They both knew. They both knew I was out there, and my half sister actually bought audio tapes, books on tape back then, on how to search for a relative. She actually searched for me.
Oh,
So
And, you know,
they went and lived with their dad and your
mom
birth
was
mom.
up in Vermont. Yeah, mom was in Vermont. And
How
she
old were
didn't,
they when she left them?
when they got divorced, they were in their teens. And when my birth mother, when the ex-husband told my sister she was pregnant.
Right,
with
I
her.
got that. I was just
Yeah.
wondering when
They got
when
divorced
she-
when they were teenagers. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, so everybody on the birth mom side knew, which is very interesting, that they all
that's
do.
not the normal, right?
Well, it was a secret, but they all knew.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, so after I was done talking to my brother, back to that, I was talking to my brother. Of course, he knew about me. It wasn't a big surprise. It was just a big surprise that he found me, right?
Yeah.
He knew about me forever. And he said, well, we're going out of town. And when I get back into town, we'll, make arrangements to talk to mom. And I, like, how do you wait? You don't, right?
Right.
And
Michael, your video's off, by the way.
yeah, let me go back.
Okay.
Hang on. There, better?
What? Yep.
Yeah, I got a phone call. So I said, no. And so I said, oh, please have my sister call me. And she texted me and she goes, you ready for a phone call? And I said, yeah. And this is the one that was the whole mirror, when everyone talks about mirroring, the family stuff. We started talking. She's 10 years, almost to the date, younger than me. I'm January 26th. She's February 3rd.
Yeah.
We joke with mom, did you worry we were gonna have the same birth date?
Yeah.
Yeah. We both do triathlons. We both surf. We both were swimmers in high school. We both mountain bike. We both, we do everything. And she actually traveled the country to see Def Leppard concerts. She was hardcore Def Leppard. And when my wife calls me, her ringtone is Def Leppard, pour some sugar on me.
It's kind of crazy. So you and your half sister, your younger half sister, are just totally close.
We're just, yeah, it's the weirdest thing when it happens to you.
How long ago was that you found each other?
2 years ago. I'm 61.
It's really new. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I was 58 when this all happened.
And have you met in person yet?
Oh. When it first happened, after those first couple of phone calls, you did the Facebook, you did the text messages, you did everything. And for 2 weeks, I was numb. I didn't laugh. I didn't smile. I had no emotions whatsoever. And finally, we have a travel trailer. And I said to my wife, I go, we're out of here. We're in Atlanta. We're going to Tampa. And so I called them. I go, is it okay if I come down? And they all said, absolutely. Because they all knew about me. I was a known commodity. And I went down, and the first morning,
commodity.
The first morning I went down, or we drove down. The first morning I was meeting with my sister because she was going out of town. And she walked up, and we walked into the restaurant and I looked at her in the eyes and I go, it's real. And she goes, yeah, it's real. And it wasn't real until that moment. None of it, Facebook, whatever, text messages, phone calls didn't make it real. And so we had breakfast together, took a couple of pictures, and left. I had no idea that we're almost identical twins. You don't see that, as an adoptee. My wife was just blown away by it. And so that afternoon, I made arrangements. I went over and saw my birth mother that day, and so walked up, she's out watering her plants. And I go, is that Mary Ellen? And she goes, yes. And I went up and gave her a hug, and she goes, well, thank you for that. She's a very strong woman, very, very, very strong woman. And I think she was very worried how I would react. Would I what, how it would go. And we spent 2 hours talking. And she even said afterwards, she goes, yeah, I noticed you were looking around the room the whole time. I'm looking at all of her art and her books and stuff. And I'm just trying to feel who this woman is, And she goes, how about we go to dinner? And I said, yeah, okay, let's go to dinner. And she said, she went into the bathroom, got, ready to go. And she came out, and I had read enough by then, because I was part of the Cradle Society group that, there's a few reunion stories and whatnot that I've read, not very many at all. And she goes, what I feel about this whole thing? And I'm going, uh-oh, in the back of my head, I'm going, here it comes. I'm glad I got to know you, but we can't do this, and blah, blah, blah. And she goes, I finally feel complete.
Aww.
Yeah. So she was, and I was like, wow. So we went to dinner, and the next day we were there, and my brother came over with his son and daughter and wife, and we spent the whole afternoon together, yapping away, talking, and it was really cool. I mean, that was my initial thing. And that's what kind of made it real for me at that point, I mean, so
how did you become involved in Adoptees Connect? Was it around this time just because of everything happening?
Oh, no, it was way after.
Oh, it was after.
It was due to listening to podcasts all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and getting all of that. So yeah, as far as that was concerned. So a couple of months later, after being connected with them, I finally went to I realized that my half brother's son was only 9% for me, right? Connected to me on Ancestry. And there was a guy on both Ancestry and 23andMe that was like 5%. I said, well, he might be close. And so I sent him a note. I go, hey, do you know this person, these two names? And he goes, oh yeah, I know them well. And the one is doing Ancestry all the time. He actually gave me his phone number and said, go ahead and call me. And so I called him, and he goes, oh yeah, I know this person well. And I went, okay. And he goes, yeah, you should check her out. She's on Ancestry. So a couple hours later, I go back to Ancestry, and sure enough, the girl from 5 years ago said, hey, have you been talking to Jeffrey today? And I said, yeah.
Oh, the girl that sent you the original Ancestry message
5 years ago that I didn't care about. And so what happened is it turned out that she was my birth father's sister.
Okay.
And no one in the family knew anything about me.
That's why she was like, we don't know who you are.
Yeah.
She didn't know anything but my birth mother, she says she told him, but who knows? You know what I mean?
So have you reached out to him? I mean,
he passed away 10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
She connected with, she immediately contacted his son, his eldest son, which would be my half brother.
Your brother, yeah.
He told her about me, and that put everything in motion. And now I've actually met my birth father passed away, had 4 sons and a sister.
Oh.
I mean, a daughter. So I've met 3 of the half brothers and the sister.
So they've been welcoming to you.
You know what? They didn't know anything about me.
But and I mean, once they found out, it wasn't like go away.
It was very, very, very hard for them. Their dad, they revered their father. They revere their father. I'm not going to say they did or didn't. They revered their father. And to have somebody like me put in the middle of it is pretty rough.
Yeah.
I can look back now that it's been a couple of years. It was all, and it's all about me. I'm an adoptee. My world has changed forever, and there's no way of fixing it. It's done. But I'm finally getting to the point where I can try to give them some empathy, because I've really put a wrench in their life, all of them, as far as that's concerned, both mom and dad's side, but especially dad, because nobody knew about me on that side.
Not
And
even the father, probably. right?
Maybe he
Is that what you're-
didn't. You're,
no,
you're-
he was supposed to, according to my birth mother, he knew.
Oh, he knew.
Yeah.
Did she have a
after-
conversation with him?
after she put me up for adoption and
Oh,
everything, had
okay.
a conversation. But what is he going to do? He goes home, he gets married right away. Within 2 months, she's pregnant. And then she goes and says, hey, by the way, I just put your son up for adoption. What is he supposed to do?
I have a very similar story to that. And
Yeah.
and they're young men dealing with this, which is
Very young. Yeah. Right out of college,
Yeah.
And the interesting part is that she was one, if you've ever looked into it or read it, she was his wife, my birth father's wife, was an adoptee from the Tennessee Children's
interesting.
Society, from the Tennessee
Ooh,
Children's Society.
like Georgia
we
Tan
did.
era?
Yeah, she was a Georgia Tan baby,
Oh my
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
and he paid to search for her family. So it
Is
kind of makes
she
you
still alive?
wonder. Yeah, I talked to her multiple times.
Oh, is she kind to you or?
Very
or-
much so. Well,
Oh, good.
Why wouldn't she? She's an adoptee.
Right. She sees
Wow.
it.
Yeah.
Did
I
she
mean-
find her family ever? If you're saying
Yes,
he
she
paid,
did.
she
Yes,
did.
she did. Yeah. Yeah.
So he paid
Yeah.
for her to have that, but didn't look for you.
Never said anything to anybody.
Yeah.
So who knows if my birth mother, I
You
don't
don't
know.
know. No.
I don't know for a fact. I mean, my birth mother's pretty smart cookie. She's not, she's a nurse. She was an EMT and a flight paramedic and a nurse, and you always wondered why my daughter wanted to be a nurse. Well,
Yeah.
there it is, Yeah. So it's, it's got a lot of twists and turns, And all I meant to say is that the first time I talked to my mom, and I had mentioned how, my son's Daniel, my youngest son, when my mom, the first time I talked to her, she said, oh, I named you. Did you want to know what your name was? And I said, oh, yeah. I wasn't really ready for that. And she goes, oh, well, I named you Daniel.
Wow.
So I have the same name as my son. And what was my birth father's name? James. So
That's
Oh.
crazy.
so the names that we gave, we were going to give to my youngest son was either James or Daniel.
So interesting.
It was fun. It was fun stuff.
It is
But
fun.
yeah, I mean, I'm very much closer to the mother's side. I'm, because they all knew about me. The father's side, it's hard for them. I'm sure it is. And, and I don't push it. I mean, if they want to contact me, I'm great with it. If they don't, I'm okay with it. They've got a whole life. They've lived their whole life, and I'm okay with that. And I've lived my life. So
When they met you, were they curious about you and like kind of like, whoa, I mean, how it's weird. They don't want to know more.
I don't know. It's just, what it is. And I think a lot of people have said this one way or another, but I have to say that as much as my mom and dad were the functional alcoholics and dysfunctional family, where I grew up was a great neighborhood. And I look back at, on mom's side, the divorce and, moving across different, states and everything and not having a home. And then I look at, I hear about how my birth father's family grew up, and it's like, I don't know if I would pick any one of the three of them. They're, it's, where I grew up is where I grew up. And
Yeah.
the friends I have that I grew up with, I still have today. So I can't say I wanted to trade my life
Yeah.
to live with, my birth parents.
I think it's more not even about like, it's a deeper thing than that, right? It's, and you don't know what it would have been.
Right,
I think
you
about
don't-
that a
yeah.
lot. Like, I think, yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious where you're at now with your adoptive family.
My adoptive father passed away a year before my daughter was born, like, so 34 years ago.
Hmm.
Right. And so, he he's out of the picture. That's fine. my adoptive mom, she's not doing great. She's in California, but when I did find the family, she was okay with it. And finally I broke down and said, hey, by the way, Mom, I found my birth father. I figured that was safe because both of them were dead. And I waited about 2 months and I said, hey, by the way, guess what? I found my birth mother. And she goes, oh, well, and she was kind of okay with it. The first thing out of her mouth was, though, have you talked to her? And I said, oh yeah. She goes, well, you don't call her mom, do you?
Yeah, I think that's pretty, I think that's what they would say,
Yes. And actually, believe it or not, yes. I mean, probably 6 months into it, she picked up the phone because I talked to her probably 2 or 3 times a week. And so about 6 months into it, she picked up the phone. I go, hey, Mom. And she was real quiet for a second. And she says, yep, I own it.
Wait,
Yeah.
this is your birth mother?
My birth mother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's very much okay with that.
And have your adopted mom met your birth mom or anything like that?
No. That's not gonna. My adoptive mom's not in a state now. She's 92 and
yeah,
she's not ready to do that at all. So, and on a side note, after my first phone call with my half brother that first night, the first phone call I made was to my adoptive sister. It just made sense, I mean, I don't know why, right? You just wanted to tell somebody, and who else would you tell but the person who would understand?
Yeah.
And she did 23andMe that night.
Oh, she did. And so is she now finding?
2 weeks later, I get a phone call from her, and she very rarely calls me, very rarely. And it's dead silence on the other side. She goes, I got 4 half sisters. So she's got her own story.
I like that you could be there for her, like a journey with her.
She's okay with it. It's just she's not comfortable with it. She did it because of what happened to me and not because of she was ready for it. So, but the fun part, when I went up to Chicago to meet my family up there, my birth father's side, we went to the Bears, Chicago Bear game. That was, my adoptive dad and my birth dad were huge Bear fans. So we went to the football game, tailgated, and I went to the other parking lot and here's a fun one. I met my adoptive sister's half brother who was tailgating.
Wow.
So on each side of the stadium, you have 2 different things going on.
Yeah. And so I get over there and take pictures with them. And my sister, who lives in San Diego, calls me up. She goes, where are you? And I go, I'm at the stadium. She goes, well, have you gone over? And I go, look at your text messages. I just sent her the picture of, and so she has a picture of her adoptive brother and her half brother from that day. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a really great day to spend with them at the stadium. And, we had a lot of fun. And like I said, I don't push that relationship. I want it to happen organically if they want it to happen. So,
well, it sounds so, like that it's early days, right? I mean, it's still really.
It's 2.5 years.
That's pretty new-ish.
That is pretty new. I've listened to enough podcasts, and you guys have interviewed enough people to know that 2.5 years in the world of reunion is brand new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is like a good reunion story from what I'm hearing. Not
my God,
so far,
Oh my God. I hear the podcasts over and over again of the reunion stories, and I feel blessed that it's the way my story has gone and the way people have treated me, and everyone's done their thing. And so if it goes astray, it goes astray. I'm kind of okay. I hope it doesn't. I really pray it doesn't, but it's been really, really nice. So to meet everyone and to be part of everyone. And, my final thing is the funniest one of all is not funny, but my adoptive mom, who's the narcissistic, savior type, she never got along with my wife, never said 10 words to her whole life, kind of thing. She was like a non-person. And it turns out that who's my wife's best friend. I walk in the room and my wife is on the phone talking, and I'm going, who's she talking to? And I go, oh my God, she's talking to my birth mother.
Oh,
They
That's nice
talk
for
all
her.
the time. And my wife has gone down there twice and actually stayed with her without me.
Aw.
I love that.
Yeah, it is, and for my wife, I'm so happy for her that she finally,
Yeah.
it's not
Has
a
a mother-in-law.
mother-in-law. It is
Yes.
a mother-in-law, but it's, she never had that. And, everything they like, is the same. They love gardening, they love this, they love that. And so that's truly a blessing to see those two get along so well.
That's a
Wow.
neat full circle.
It really is.
I'm amazed by your story because you came to it so late in life, like just the blinders
Yeah.
on, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're like so involved. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you
that's
help
why-
and you help other adoptees, which is interesting.
Well, that's
Speaking
what's
of, yeah,
starting-
before we jump off, could you tell people a little, about if they don't have about Adoptees Connect and how they can find
Yeah.
it?
We have Adoptees Connect in Atlanta. It's called Adoptees Connect Atlanta. And actually, Tiffany and I, who run it, we don't care who joins us. It's supposed to be Atlanta people, but over the months now, we've had people from California, Arizona, it's like whatever. Originally, it was meant for people to get together in person. And of course, COVID made that, impossible.
Mhm.
So the Zoom call started, and then it was supposed to be, Zoom in Atlanta. And so we started, and it went on it started to bloom a little bit, and we just said, okay, we don't care. We're all adoptees. We're all like family. We can instantly talk to each other without it's easy. And so we don't care who joins us, and it's Adoptees Connect. You can find it on Facebook. And the other thing that I'm part of now is it's the Georgia Alliance for Adoptee Rights.
Oh, right. You were telling us
Yeah.
about this. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is it's a bill that's going to be going on next year, not the election year. They want to try to pass it, and that's going to be where in Georgia you can at 21 you can get your either 18 or 21. I have to look again. You can get your original birth certificate, no questions asked. And it's a clean bill. In other words, it can't be, oh well, if you're over 35
Right.
and or if your birth parents say it's okay. No, they just
Right.
want a clean bill. And like Vermont just passed it like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
I read
So,
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there was, someone we know from Twitter who was very active in
Right.
that. Yeah.
Right. And so, and the only reason I'm involved with that is not because I'm the big, that I understand it. It's just that I live in Georgia and I could lobby my representatives to vote for it. So
That's great.
there are people that are far more involved with it from the outside that are, smarter than I am.
I thought about doing that here because I got my original birth certificate, which was a shock because it had a name on it different than what I was told. But it was only because both of my birth parents are no longer alive, and I had to get it notarized. And I mean,
Yeah.
Is that from California? That you got it?
Missouri. I'm in Missouri now, which is where I was
okay.
born. And,
Right. Okay.
So so I thought I should do that here. I should.
Right. And there,
here. So maybe I'll connect with you and find out what you're doing to.
So, I mean, more and more, the reality is I don't know why they even fight it anymore, because between 23andMe and Ancestry and GEDmatch and all this other stuff, Pandora's box is open. Why do you even try to, stop it? So, but, I hope it happens, and that just helps Georgia adoptees. I'm Illinois, and believe it or not, I sent away for mine about 2 months ago, and I didn't check one of the boxes the right way, and they sent it back. So I just
that
recently.
happened. Yeah, happened to me. Did
So
you have
I
to get
just
yours notarized?
No, I didn't for Illinois. Illinois, believe it or not, as a liberal state, has opened their adoption records quite a while ago. So, and a lot of people I hear from like California is like, why would, California?
Yeah. In
very liberal
Colorado.
state.
That's where I'm from. Hello.
Yeah.
Well, New
why
York
do-
too. I think they finally did. New
Yeah,
York
they finally
finally
did.
opened them up a couple years
Yeah.
ago. Yeah.
So but I think so I think it's gaining momentum.
Yes.
I mean, if a place like Vermont does it, believe me,
Yeah.
it'll start to gain some ground. But hopefully for all adoptees,
Yeah.
because
Well,
I mean, you listen, there is a podcast that is Greg Loof, Adoptees Right Advocates, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And when people talk about it, it's our right. It's our paperwork. It's not, why can't we have information about us, as
About
an
us.
adult?
I mean, right. We
Yeah.
are fully grown adults. I mean, come on.
Yeah. So
Infuriating. Well, thank you
Right
for
on.
all your hard work in
Yes.
that area.
I
and-
haven't done a lot of hard work. I've done quite a few podcasts, but you guys do.
You've
far
done a
more
lot of hard work. You do the Adoptees Connect, and
Yeah.
you reach out to
Yeah.
people. I see you out there.
No,
That's a
but
lot.
your podcast is great. You're reaching out to more people than you know, and
Thank you.
I'll leave with saying that all podcasts that I listen to, including yours, is my therapy. I don't
Aw.
have a therapist. I mean, it's too expensive, and my insurance doesn't cover it as much as I'd like to.
Well,
do
there's
it.
another battle that.
Right, but I think
Sarah and I can
think
play
if
one on
people-
TV. Yeah.
I think if people listen to I think if adoptees listen to podcasts, it's very, very therapeutic.
It is.
It is.
I feel like it's our therapy to me.
Yes.
Yes. Like talking
Yeah.
to you is for a
Yeah.
week. I'm full in this. Yes.
Yes.
Right on. Well, I thank both of you for what you do. So
Thank you
And
for
thank
being
you.
here and
Thanks for
sharing
having
your
me on.
story with us.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Michael.